So, as you know, our focus tonight will be to find a bit of purpose. As Marie Claire said, life is very hectic. We get to juggle a lot of things, and sometimes it's difficult to slow down and to actually think about the purpose and to give meaning. So tonight I have presented some material, but feel free to draw my attention, to discuss. I want it to be very open and free. So what we will be exploring is my background a bit. We're going to be defining meaning, and we're going to talk a bit about myself and the world, some dilemmas that we face as humans, the concept of transcendence. I injected some inspirations from logotherapy, an area that I find very interesting. Then, to energize you to start the weekend, we have some power groups. You're going to be split up in teams and get to work a bit. And we finish it off with a discussion. So hopefully my time management is okay and we manage on time. So my background is that of a humanistic integrative counselor. I studied also existential and the existential stance. So it's I integrate aspects of these two different approaches, and other approaches also inform my approach. I work with adults, but mainly now life has taken me more into the area to work with children. And I find it very interesting to see how these young humans, little humans, have their own thoughts, have their own personality. They are free. They have their meaning, even though perhaps they can't verbalize it as much. But it's like they're more in touch or more attuned with what they want to do. And as humans, I think life leads us to be distracted from our path. And I believe in supporting my clients in counseling to find and to create their own meaning, but to do it in a moral and ethical way. Because everyone can find their own meaning, but it has to be done with respect to other people also. To live authentically, so to be the best version that yourself can be. And to acknowledge, to live authentically, you don't have to be perfect, but you have to acknowledge your limitations, your difficulties, and also your strengths, and all the possibilities that you can have. And I also place an emphasis to be aware of how we assume and understand things. I like, it's called the phenomenological stance, and it is thinking about how you give meaning to something. And it can be quite biased at times, because the way I interpret an experience or an event depends on the experiences that I've gone through in life. So my interpretation and your interpretation might not be the same, but they can still both be very true. So I believe that once you're aware of how you're thinking and how you are experiencing things, then you can be aware of your blind spots, and then you can be aware of how you can change. If I'm going too fast, stop me. And the focus is also on personal choice. And so with my clients, I will be focusing on what they can do. Also in respect of limitations, which can be natural or self-imposed limitations. So some natural limitations would be the context I live in, the time in history that I am in, but also some self-imposed, like I can't do this because I've never done this, or I can't do this because it's not expected of me to do it. So then once you focus on your personal choice, so yes, there are these limitations, but what can I do? What can be done? And with freedom comes responsibility, like Spider-Man. With power comes responsibility. And with freedom, it's the same. Hello? It's okay. So when we are free to choose, we have to be conscious of how it is going to impact other people. And that is our responsibility. So we are being free, we are acting out of our own ethical framework, perhaps. And this has to be in vis-a-vis with how it's going to impact other people. Also, so people come for therapy or counseling because there is a conflict. It can be internal or it can be an external conflict. And this results, I like Irvin Yalom, he talks a lot about these givens, they're called, that when we face death, when we face issues about freedom, when we think about isolation and meaninglessness, an internal conflict arises because you know that you're going to die. So that creates anxiety and you don't know when or how. So that creates a lot of anxiety. But this anxiety that you know that you're going to die, you know that you're not infinite, then it might give you the energy, the courage, the creativity to do something with this time that you have. Or else you might despair and not do anything. You might also live in denial or engage in things that make you forget that you're going to die, which can be unhealthy at times, but it can be what helps you to get through life. So I think the most important thing is not to judge. It's like just to be aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And to achieve self-actualization and to define the meaning for life. So through therapy, you would be reaching your potential or your potential at that point in time. And you can say that for you, the meaning is this, or it might be this. It doesn't have to be set in stone. So now it's your first task. You're going to scan the QR code and you're going to answer this question. How would you define in the context, how would you define meaning in the context of a meaningless world? ما نمشي نعمل الكود لسه شي يجي سكان من فوق السكرين. They can scan it. Sorry. Question is on part.
So do you define meaning in a meaningless way?
Mm-hmm. So to give your definition of meaning, استنى أقلب.
Is the question what is our meaning or how do we arrive at it?
And how would you define meaning? Yes, if you had to give someone a definition, someone who hasn't an idea what meaning there is to life, what would you tell this person? Has anyone submitted an answer? Supposed that today.
Yeah.
Alright. Supposta bdejti ma nafx.
So many different interpretations, right?
Yes. But there is an overlap also.
Yeah, there is.
Does the last refresh something? Usually it refreshes alone, I don't know what. So, from your answers, there's helping others, purpose, freedom, absurdity, love, possibilities, leaving the world better and finding your gift to the world, consciousness and positive impact, life's meaning to person, happiness, family, self-verification, context, connection, humanity. It's very interesting, thank you. Maybe. So we were along the same lines, and there were some differences, but I wanted to present some philosophers' ideas of how they would define meaning. So according to Schopenhauer, the meaning of life is to deny it. By denying that there is a meaning, and by denying life, it's the meaning. Kierkegaard said that the meaning of life is to obey God passionately. Nietzsche, the meaning of life is the will to power. So if you will something, you can actually do it. Tolstoy, the meaning of life lies in a kind of irrational knowledge called fate. Heidegger, the meaning of life is to live authentically. Sartre, life is meaningless, but one is urged to make a free choice that would give our life meaning and responsibility. Camus, life is absurd and meaningless, and the best way to cope with this is to... Sorry, I had a lot of mistakes, and I checked it. So to cope with this is to live life with passion, using everything up, and with an attitude of revolt, defiance, or scorn. William James, life is meaningful and worth living because of a spiritual order we believe in. So, philosophers had different ideas, and like there's no meaning, life is, there's no purpose, or the purpose is something other than you, like fate, or that you have to find the meaning for life. So there are a lot of mixed messages or mixed ideas. However, I mean, it's nice to listen to philosophers and it's nice to read and to be inspired by them. But then ultimately one has to find what works for himself or what works for herself. So it's nice to have these ideas and to share them with others, to help others find meaning. But the most important thing is that what you're aspiring to feels natural or good for you. But sometimes a person might try to live according to set rules or dogma or philosophical values, but they might feel that they are not being true to themselves. So I believe that whatever you choose, the importance is that you feel that it's true for you.
That could change by time as well. Huh?
Yes.
Yes.
And I believe humans are very subjective because the experience that you live through, it gives you different information and you process information differently. So the context of me and the world, I and the world. So one can find meaning as an individual, but also as part of something larger, as part of a group, as part of family or society. And these might differ at times. So I might be part of something, I might agree with some of their values, but they might not be all of the values that I embrace. And it's good to identify what belongs to me and what belongs to others. So when it comes to culture and some expectations from the culture that you live in or the group that you affiliate with, some values or priorities may be passed on to you and you might be following them, but you might not be embracing them or feeling that they belong to you. So it is important for us to identify what belongs to one part and what belongs to another part. And also to acknowledge that we are a part of something, but we are also ourselves. So to keep this balance, because sometimes we might lose ourselves in being a part of something because we want to belong. Or sometimes we might resist so much that we might be acting in a way that goes even against our values, but just because we want to rebel against something or because we don't want that something is imposed on us. So ideally, there is a balance between these two. Also to acknowledge that we are both a subject and an object. So to be a subject means to be powerless and to be like without control. You're just flowing and there are the other conditions, like there's a war in your country or there's illness and there are some genetics or expectations. And you behave according to these external factors. So like that you are a subject and you don't have control, and sometimes it can be comfortable too. I might say, I can't do anything about it, I was born this way. And sometimes it could be comfortable not to challenge your life narrative. And also, other times, we are the object, so we have control, we are self-directed, we can decide, so yes, this is where I'm coming from, but these are the things that I can do. These are the things that I can change. And it is important, and Sartre and de Beauvoir talk a lot about the subject and the object, and I like how they come to the conclusion that there needs to be a balance between the two, because you can't deny that you are a subject, but you can't deny that you are only an object. You are a bit of everything. At times, you just have to be a result of the factors that there are around you, but at times you have the power, you have the strength or the creative resources to change things. I think the focus on the balance is very important because sometimes someone might be struggling to achieve something, but there are limitations, there can be limitations, and this can be very frustrating for people. If you live in a context where there's a limit to how much you can study, for example, let's take education as an example, and this can be very frustrating, but if you can acknowledge this is what I can do at this point in time, it will be easier on the person. And then, as we're saying, things can change. You can find other ways of directing this energy that you want to direct. And by finding balance, you find your potential. So if you're not angry or frustrated about your limitations, then you can be more creative. You can take a step back and say, all right, so at this point, there's this limitation, but then how can I find my purpose in all of this? So some dilemmas that we come across as human beings, and is one of them this: what is the meaning of life? How can I give my life meaning? What purpose do I have? Why am I here? What's going to happen? That infinity, as we were saying, this can create a lot of tension and anxiety, knowing that we are here for a limited time. Self-direction and limitations, so this creates internal conflict. As we're saying, I know that I can do something, or I accept that I can't do something, and these are my limitations. So these are things that in us, they create tension or unrest or discontent. Our own flaws and biases, and we are all flawed in some way, and we all have our biases. When I say flawed, it means we are affected by a number of things. So if I have an ideal in my mind of what I want to be, I have to accept that some things aren't as perfect as I want them to be. And our own ethics and morality, how to create our code of conduct, how to behave towards others. If I am finding my own meaning of life, how is it ethical? How is it moral? Why is it, if it's acceptable in my culture, but not acceptable in someone else's culture? How can I be respectful? So these are all dilemmas and questions that one might face as a human on our quest to find meaning. I'm not sure if you've ever encountered this word transcendence. It is quite a spiritual idea. It's like if you take, I like using Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So once you have all of these, they are settled, you can self-actualize. So first you start with your physiological needs and your safety needs. And these are, like, they focus on yourself. And then when you self-actualize, so you've reached the potential, you've managed to break through your difficulties or your barriers, and you are the best version of yourself. And then once this is reached, then you can transcend. So to transcend means to change your focus onto others. So it's not internal, you're not focusing, what can I do to improve myself only? But now that I've improved myself, what can I do? How can I use this to help others? What can I do to contribute to the bigger picture? I really like Maslow. He's like basic, but it's very important. Because in truth, once you have an aspect missing, it's very difficult to be a balanced and reaching your potential. Because once you feel threatened, for example, or you feel afraid of being abandoned, or you're actually abandoned, or you lose someone, then it's you're shaken, your ground is shaken, and perhaps you might doubt your meaning.
Do you actually need to achieve a level of self-actualization to transcend? Sometimes I think you can transcend without even reaching that level or reaching it fully.
Yes, I think even though it's a pyramid, I think sometimes they overlap and you have a bit of this and it's okay. It doesn't have to be the maximum. So it's good enough. So yes, you can. There are many people who transcend and perhaps their basic needs aren't being met.
Especially self-actualization, because I don't know how easy you can reach that level.
And you might reach it and then you might lose it again.
Yes, or realize that you didn't actually reach it.
Yes.
Maybe if I can add something. Sometimes what I fear, maybe sometimes I observe, that if someone is transcending a lot, like giving a lot before self-actualization, sometimes it's more a sign of like some problems underneath, you know. For example, lack of self-esteem. So you try
to compensate
by helping others. So there is this danger of skipping the steps, kind of. So building and then helping others, sort of, and then like, reaching out.
Like the skills.
I also like this concept, the ikigai. It's a Japanese concept, and this is like when you self-actualize, when you transcend. Ikigai is the core, and you reach it by combining all of your aspects. So what you love to do, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, what you're good at, and then the overlap. And there's passion, there's your mission, there's your vocation or your profession. And I like it to take a look at it and say, let me think about my life. Am I doing what I love to do, or am I only doing it because I'm being paid for it? And what I'm doing, I'm being paid for it, but is it what the world needs? How can I be contributing to the world with what I am doing? And like I like the feeling of completeness, because these circles, they overlap each other in these areas of our life, and it gives you when I see it, it gives me a sense of peacefulness and balance. And as we're saying, it's good because the circles are quite wide, so you can be a bit here, a bit there. So, logotherapy was created by Viktor Frankl. He was an Austrian psychiatrist. He lived for 3 years in Auschwitz. I'm not sure about pronunciation. And there were some basic concepts for his therapy. I like one of his quotes. He says, it's not what life can give you, but it's what you can give to life. So it's not what you've been handed, but what you can do. And so he focused a lot on empowerment, and he helped a lot of people in the concentration camps. So logotherapy focuses that human life has meaning, and that human beings they have this need to experience their sense of life meaning. And also that humans have the potential to experience meaning under any and every circumstance. So even if it's the worst circumstance, you can find meaning in it. Also, he said, and he talked about the freedom of will, the will to meaning, and the meaning of life. And so the freedom of will, it's like you have the power to be self-directed. And the will to meaning, so you have your purpose, and your purpose defines your meaning. And then you find your meaning of life. So I've talked a lot. Now I'm going to split you up into, we can do 3 groups, and we have the people online. There are only 2.
3 people.
3 people, all right. So what we're going to do, you're going to have a chart, you're going to have some markers, and you are going to answer. You can either choose 1 question for each group, or you can answer all the questions. Depends how enthusiastic you are. So how do I arrive to define my meaning of being or my meaning for life? How can I form a good enough internal source of evaluation, your moral and ethical compass? And what blocks or challenges can be present to stop you from achieving your meaning?